Bonjour. So I am sat on the floor at the moment and it is rather cold on my butt, but we are about to go into the dark depths of my Cinquecento Turbo's undercarriage because today we are starting the exhaust, or at least carrying on with the exhaust. I will actually touch on, because I did forget that I've converted this car to an external fuel pump. So as I'm crawling my way through the dirt and the grime, we'll have a quick look at that on the way past as well, in case it's something you want to do. Otherwise, we'll be cracking on and getting up some welding, some cutting, some more welding, some swearing, some movement around, and chopping it in, cutting, swearing again. So I don't expect this to be smooth and easy, but let's get to it. There you go. Look, anyone whose lifelong wish is to see me underneath a car, tick that off your bucket list. Well, I'm happy to report that I am safe and well, at the moment at least. There is absolutely no room under here whatsoever, so if anyone's got a 2-post lift or some quick jacks they want to give me for nothing, that'd be absolutely golden. But we'll take a quick look at this remote fuel pump. Again, as always, any questions and stuff, I'll be happy to answer them afterwards. Otherwise, we'll have a look at the exhaust, see where it starts and finishes, and then I guess just go over what the plan is to finish it up. I don't expect this to go very well. For the experience of me welding and cutting and making exhaust, always has been a massive pain. But we'll face those challenges as we come to it. And you'll be there to laugh or congratulate me, depending on how this goes. Okay, here you go. So here's the underneath of the car. That's where the exhaust ends. But here is the actual external fuel pump. Now, usually this is where the larger fuel filter goes. And all I've basically done is modified the bracket, i.e. bent it slightly so that it will fit the smaller pump. Otherwise, it runs off the same rubber hose, all the same hard lines. The only thing I've done is I've added a small pre-filter just to give the pump a little bit of an easier time. And it's 8mm fuel lines on a Cinquecento, and this is a 12mm inlet on the pipe. So I just got a, not a reducer, the opposite to reducer, one of those increasers, if you want to call it that. Then it goes up and it just basically just follows all the standard hard lines. So I'm going to stick a picture up now to show what I did to the actual fuel filter housing itself. There you go. So that is effectively it. So the fuel pump's been removed, and then the pickup for that's just been ran down until the existing actual sieve itself. My friend Tom actually suggested that it was best to have the pipe run down along the bottom of the sieve like that, and then slash cut it so you don't have any problems with fuel pickup. And the eagle-minded amongst you will notice that obviously the fuel filter is now gone. So to compensate for that, I've got a billet race one in the engine bay itself. So the specs on this are great with how much it can flow and the microns it filters down to. So I've got no concerns with that at all. And it just means I can get to it easily and clean it. Anyway, that's quite enough of that. If you have any questions about it, please just go on the Facebook page or do it on the comments. And I will do my best to answer it. I'll do a little bit more information on it if you need. But exhaust wise, let's get down that in, shall we? Jesus. Right, there you go. So you can see just down there my heat wrapped exhaust that goes under the sump. Fairly close to everything, like everything else in this car does, up to my 200 sow cat. I want to keep a cat on it for lots of reasons. And then, effectively, it stops at this V-clamp. Now, I do need to actually buy another V-clamp because the one I've got is knackered because I messed it up. But the trick with V-clamps is, for those of you who don't know, is obviously you don't have a gasket on there and it clamps the two halves of the V-clamp together. I'll show you one in a minute. And then the trick is to have some of the V-clamp, some of the pipe inside the V-clamp to actually be slightly recessed back. And then on the other one, you have the pipe slightly sticking out. So when you put two bits of exhaust together, it kind of slots together like that. Bob's your uncle. So the plan for this at the moment is I need to cut this 45 at a precise angle. You can see that there's not a huge amount that I've got to make up here. So I'm going to line up the pipe at the minute, and then I'm going to make a slight cut here just as it starts to bend straight, and that should hopefully then just give me a nice level straight run. Now if I wiggle back without ruining this camera work too much, you'll see it is a pretty straight run then, all the way from down there all the way up to here. Now that's when it all starts to go a little bit pear-shaped. So it then has to run, if you can see it, up round the outside of the tank, and then up to, because I like to make my life difficult, my centre exit, which at the moment is going to be this classic Mini upswept exhaust. So I've actually built a little heat shield for this, which we'll get to at some point. I trust me, it is not quite as wonky as it actually looks on camera, but I still need to tidy that up a little bit with a Dremel. And it sits out probably about 3 or 4 inches or so. It looks pretty good, in my personal opinion. Would it have been easier if I put a fuel cell in it? Yes. Would it have been easier if I'd have paid someone else to do it? Absolutely. But I'm not doing either of those two things yet. The fuel cell might come at some point. But without further ado, let's go and cut us some metal. And then we'll see if that 45-degree angle cut that I do is a good start. Because if it all goes wrong there, it all goes wrong further down the line. Okay, so it's another day. I thought I'd wait until the morning, because if there's one bit of advice I can give you is don't tick off your neighbours if you do this stuff quite often. Effectively what I did yesterday is I just kind of, you know what they say, measure once, cut 3 times, is that what it is? Something like that. But obviously, you know, without being silly, I know metal, you know, you can add more onto it if it all goes a little bit pear-shaped, but you don't want to be doing any more welding, especially if you don't like it like I do. So what I effectively did was I measured it up on the car, marked out where I wanted, and I kind of added maybe another 10 mil onto what I thought was probably needed, and then mark the line. And it just means that if I have to cut a tiny bit more off before I do it, and so be it, you can just kind of slowly snip things off. Now, one little tip, if you can see it on the camera, is if you wrap tape round where you've masked up, it usually follows quite a natural line anyway. And you'll see, because obviously where the radius of a bend, if you cut it wrong, then you start getting like a kind of oval pipe, and obviously you don't want that if you're trying to join 2 pipes together. But if you put that tape on, and you'll see, it just kind of gives you a vague idea that that looks pretty round from the angle that I'm cutting it. If I was cutting it wrong, you'd automatically see the tape kind of like bunching up a little bit. So that should be pretty good. So I actually prefer using one of these like reciprocating, you know, Americans call them sawzalls or whatever for cutting this. Grinders are fine. I mean, it'll get through it like butter, but it just tends to be that by the time you've got around to the other side, it doesn't quite line up. Whereas this, it's relatively quiet compared to some of the other stuff. Doesn't make quite as much mess, and actually does a nice clean cut. So I'll do that, and then we'll get back under the car, test it. I may or may not film that bit, but if not, as long as it's good, we'll come back out and we'll tack on the new V-clamp once that turns up, and then we'll just work back from that. Oh, and it goes without saying, don't be silly, don't be one of those people. Look after your ears and your eyes. You only get one set. It takes 2 seconds to get some of these on, and trust me, it'll be better for you in the long run. Oh, there you go. So you will see that it's pretty straight on one side, but look, I mean, I have overrun where I've marked up before, but I will say, especially with those like saws or like reciprocating saws, kind of let it follow its natural route a little bit, because that may well be the straightest cut. You might try and like force it to go exactly the way you've marked it, but as long as it's a little bit over where you started, that's good, because that might end up being bang on. Because I mean, even just looking, you can see that is pretty round, hasn't really got much of an oval to it at all, so the angle for that was spot on. So we'll chuck it back on into the V-clamp that's all there at the minute. I probably won't tack it just yet, because I'm just waiting for the new one to get up. So and then yeah, we'll just crack on from that. Now, a little tip while we're talking about this stuff, please don't do what I do. I always get about 2 or 3 bits into an exhaust and think, that's done, get that all welded up, get it all sorted, because I like to, you know, get it all painted with my heat paint and wrap it and make it all nice. Don't do that. Don't do that till the end. Really, my exhaust, probably most of it, should probably still be tacked now in case I needed to change a little bit around. There are a couple of little bits that could have done with being maybe a centimetre like slightly shorter, just to lift it a little bit. So yes, learn from Ben Crook. Do it in one long little stages until you get to the end and you know it's kosher, then weld it all up. That's what professionals do. There's a frigging reason for that. Here I am again, another day has passed. I really do have to just try and fit this stuff in when I can, but I'm just as shocked as you probably are that I've just test fitted this and it is, dare I say it, perfect. I will show you just to prove it, but yeah, can't get over it. I actually followed my own advice and it paid off. What I did do, as you might have seen quickly from that time lapse, is just cleaned up the burred edges and stuff. But one little tip, or at least I find it better for welding, is if you're going to be welding 2 flat bits together, if you just put it on the, you can't really see it, but if you just take off that very edge, just so it almost like dips in just a little bit. And when you put the two halves together, you've almost got like a little mini ridge just to put the weld in. Again, something I knew I should have done on some of the other welding, but I haven't. It should just hopefully mean you'll just penetrate the metal a little bit better, and yeah, when you're welding it should be a bit easier. So I'll grab the camera, we'll get under there. You know, it's a bit of a tight squeeze, so it might not be ideal, but yeah, we'll take a look, and then hopefully the rest of that first whole middle section should be pretty easy, because it's basically just a long straight pipe, which I've actually got. What have I done with it? Here it is. Thankfully, which has been taken up by this whack and great piece. So apart from a little bit of welding onto there, then it all goes back, and that's when you know it starts getting a little bit more difficult. But come on, we'll get under the car and we'll take a look. Okay, that was about as easy to get under here as it was the last time. You'd have to excuse the noise because somebody has chosen this precise moment to cut their lawn outside. So if you see here, if I pop this in, now again, obviously I do need to get the proper V-clamp on there so I can be absolutely sure, but you might have noticed in the last video as well, like it was sat over quite far, but thankfully with a little bit of flex that I've got in that flexi pipe, and the V-clamps at the front could be loosened off a bit as well. I do have a little, you know, maybe an inch either way, but happy to say, if I direct that up, where's my pipe? Ugh. This is not going to be easy while holding the camera, but if I lightly touch that on there, you can see, well, or not as the case may be, that it does follow the path that I need it to. So I'm calling that a win. One little thing just to bear in mind as well, this is where the standard clamp is, or the hook I suppose. So once this does go down here, that is going to be, that will be where I actually attach a hook. Now it's going to be really short. It's only going to be a tiny little bar I expect before it goes onto a standard one. It might not even be that ideal, but we'll see. And I mean, I can basically weld it right onto the bottom of the pipe, so it's just a tiny little hook, and it might be that the rubber actually sits right next to it, but that should be fine. And we'll cross that when we get to it, because you can see it is actually resting on the anti-roll bar at the moment, so it does need to go up about 10 mil probably before it's, so it's not rattling around like mad. So yeah, I'm calling that a win, but I will say, obviously I can't do much with it at the moment until that V-clamp turns up, but it does mean that I can actually weld, or at least tack, as I've now told you should be doing, just tack that little piece onto there. I'll probably do three small tacks. There's nothing more annoying than when you put like 2 little ones on there and it falls off halfway through. And then I guess I'll probably, if I followed my own advice of doing it stage by stage, I should really sort out that the hanger, just to make sure I can get it up high enough and it all sits properly before I start working on the rest, because in that way I can sort of loosely put the V-clamp on, hook it onto the hanger, and then I know then where I'm working with. I think the problem I had before was I was trying to do it all with like axle stands and holding it up. I mean, if you've got a ramp that's up in the air and you can be underneath it and stuff, then yeah, it's fine. But doing it on the floor, absolutely just do little bits at a time. Oh yeah, actually, I'm sure you have, but any of you that aren't familiar with V-clamps, it basically is exactly a clamp. You'll see it if you just can. There's like 2 little lips either side. Now this is actually the knackered V-clamp end that I had before. So what it basically does, that goes on one end, the other one goes on the other side. They slot in there, or they would, if I'd have done the bolt up. Right, you have one on that end, one on that half, and as you tighten this up, it literally pulls the 2 halves together, and because, I'm not going to undo it again, because the 2 mating faces are so flat and smooth, or at least they should be, it will literally seal it perfectly. Happy days. And you can take the exhaust off loads of times, which I'm seeing I will probably need to at some point. And then that's it. They're about £12. These are 2-inch ones off eBay. I mean, I would argue quality wise there's probably not a huge amount of difference in it. I mean, I wouldn't go mental, but yeah, about £12–15 for those. So either way, I'll bust out the welder. Anyone who's been looking at my Facebook page, which is actually not that many yet, but we'll keep it up, will see that my earth wire basically disintegrated on this the other day, so I'm gonna have to fix that first. That will explain why my welds were going a bit sketchy a little while ago. It must have been basically slowly dying. Otherwise, yeah, we'll get that tacked on there, and then we'll try and figure out this hanger. Okay, so that's all fixed. I would say probably for the interest of keeping these episodes fairly short and snappy, I'm going to call it a day there. I will get everything prepped up and I'll tackle those couple of little bits on. And then the beginning of the next episode will be us starting to tackle the hanger. Now, I've not actually had to do hangers on an exhaust before. I've got a few bits I'm hoping I can use for the actual hanger itself, but if not, we'll have to order something in. I will say though, I hope you found it informative. I mean, I will say as well, if you're thinking of making your own exhaust, it is pretty daunting when you start, but it's a pretty logical process. There's not too many parts involved. If you've got a fairly okay welder, which I don't really, mine's all right, then you can make something. I mean, don't expect it to last a lifetime, but I mean, there must be less than £100 of parts in here, and this would have been a £500 exhaust if I'd went anywhere to get it done. So it's absolutely worth giving it a shot anyway. But otherwise, thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next episode.